All stories are dramatized recreations. Named locations are fictionalized. Any resemblance to real persons is coincidental.
Charlotte, marine biologist. The salt spray stings my face, or maybe it's the tears. I don't know anymore. The deck of this research vessel is supposed to be my sanctuary, a place where the data is clean, the rules of the ocean are immutable, and my heart can beat in time with the waves. Not tonight. Tonight, it's a stage for a personal shipwreck, lit by the cold fluorescent lights of the company retreat. It's the music that did it. A stupid, romantic, cloying song. Thinking out loud started bleeding from someone's iPhone speaker, a signal for a few of the younger interns to sway awkwardly, wrapped around each other. Robert, my husband of 12 years, was deep in conversation with her, Sarah, from the funding department. He was laughing at something she said, and as the first chords of that song hit, a reflex, a muscle memory, made me look for him. Our song. The one we danced to at our wedding, his forehead resting against mine, promising me a lifetime of clumsy kitchen dances. My eyes found him, and I saw it. Not a grand gesture, not a passionate kiss. Something smaller, more intimate, and infinitely more devastating. As Ed Sheeran started crooning, Robert's hand, which had been resting loosely on his knee, twitched. His eyes, for a fraction of a second, flickered down to the phone in his lap. And then, with a speed that was almost furtive, he turned it over, screen down. He hit his phone. During our song. The world didn't shatter. It inverted. The roar of the Gulf of Mexico vanished, replaced by a high-pitched hum in my ears. My professional persona, Dr. Charlotte Evans, who could tag a bull shark without her pulse skipping a beat, simply short-circuited. I was just a woman on a boat, watching her husband hide a secret from another woman during the melody that was supposed to be theirs. I must have made a sound, a small, choked gasp, because he looked up. His eyes met mine across the deck, and in them I didn't see guilt or panic. I saw a fleeting, exasperated annoyance, as if I'd interrupted something important. That was the knife. The clean, precise cut that severed 12 years of shared life. The rest of the retreat is a blur of forced smiles and acidic champagne. I remember the feel of his hand on the small of my back as we said our goodnights, a touch that now felt possessive, marking his territory, not loving it. I remember the sterile silence of our rented condo, the space between us in the king-sized bed and uncrossable ocean trench. We flew home to Tampa the next day. The silence continued, thick and heavy. He tried to talk once, something about work stress, but the words just bounced off the new, cold glass wall I'd built around myself. How do you explain that you saw the entire foundation of your life crack because a man turned his phone over? It's 3 a.m. now, the house is asleep. Robert is in the guest room, by unspoken agreement. Our daughter, Lily, is dreaming 6-year-old dreams, innocent of the fault line running through her home. I'm standing in the middle of our living room, the hardwood floor cool under my bare feet. The silence is screaming at me. It's filled with the ghost of a wedding song and the image of a hidden phone. My body can't contain it anymore. The confusion, the grief, the rage that feels like it's burning me up from the inside. I need to expel it, to shatter this oppressive quiet. I don't turn on music. The silence is the enemy, and I will fight it on its own terms. I drop to the floor. My body moves in a way it hasn't since college, a desperate, jerky parody of motion. This isn't dancing, this is an exorcism. I'm spinning on my back, my limbs flailing, a mess of awkward power moves and frantic footwork. I'm a 37-year-old marine biologist, in my pajamas, breakdancing on the living room floor at 3 a.m. Tears are streaming down my face, but I'm not sobbing. I'm gasping for air between gritted teeth, my heart hammering a brutal rhythm against my ribs. I am the storm. I am the chaotic, untamable sea. And in the ridiculous, undignified, profoundly necessary act of breakdancing in the dark, I feel the first, raw, painful spark of something new. Not hope, not yet, but a fierce, defiant will to not be drowned by his lie. The current has me, but for the first time, I'm not fighting to get back to the surface. I'm deciding which way I'm going to swim. The silence after the storm is a different kind of loud. It's not the chaotic, desperate roar of my 3M breakdancing fury. This is a hollow, echoing quiet that fills the space where a future used to be. It's been a week since the retreat. 7 days of living in the same house with a stranger who wears my husband's face. I move through our home like a ghost, careful not to touch anything, as if the slightest disturbance might cause the fragile facade of our life to crumble completely. Robert tries. He makes coffee in the morning, leaves a cup for me on the counter. The gesture feels like a violation. Our morning coffee ritual was ours, a tiny anchor in our day. Now, the steaming mug is just a reminder that he is here, and he is sorry, and he has shattered everything. He finally speaks the words over a dinner neither of us eats. It's a Tuesday. Meatloaf. Lily is at a friend's house for a sleepover, a mercy I hadn't even known I needed. It was a mistake, Charlotte. It meant nothing. His voice is flat, rehearsed. Rehearsed. He's looking at the tablecloth, not at me. The words hang in the air between us, cheap and meaningless. A mistake is adding salt instead of sugar to your coffee. This was a choice, a series of choices. Choosing to talk to her, to laugh with her, to take her to a hotel room while I was at a marine conservation conference in Key Largo, presenting a paper on the resilience of coral ecosystems. The irony is a bitter taste in my mouth. I study resilience, and I possess none. Her name is Sarah, I say, my voice surprisingly steady. It's not a question. From funding, you hid your phone during our song. He flinches, finally looking up. His eyes are red-rimmed. He looks exhausted. I feel nothing. It's the nothingness that frightens me most. The rage has burned itself out, leaving behind cold, sterile ash. How long? I ask. A long pause. 6 months. 6 months. 180 days of lies. He kissed me goodbye in the mornings, helped Lily with her homework, held my hand during a scary movie, all while sharing a part of himself with someone else. The life I thought we were living was a diorama, a beautifully constructed fake, and I was the fool admiring it from the outside. I love you. I love Lily. We can fix this, he pleads, and for a second, the professional, polished Robert is gone, replaced by a scared boy. That's when I realize it's truly over. Not because of the affair, but because of this. The belief that something this profound could be fixed. Like a broken vase you can glue back together. The cracks will always be there, and you'll always know the vase is weak. I don't want a mended life. I don't want to spend the next 20 years wondering if he's hiding his phone. No, I say, the word simple and final. We can't. The next few days are a blur of practical horrors. We tell Lily together in a carefully worded, sanitized speech about mom and dad loving her very much, but needing to live in different houses. Her little face, so like his, crumples. She doesn't cry, she just looks confused. But who will read me stories here, she asks, looking around our living room. The question shatters what's left of my heart. I hold her tight, making promises I'm not sure I can keep. Robert finds an apartment. He packs his things with a quiet, grim efficiency. I don't help. I sit on the porch swing watching the Gulf, letting the rhythm of the waves steady my breathing. When he carries the last box out, he pauses. I'm sorry, Charlotte, he says. It's the first thing that has sounded genuine. I just nod. I can't give him absolution. It's not mine to give. The door closes. The sound of his car engine fades down the street. I am alone in the house. The silence returns, but it's different now. It's not waiting to be broken. It's mine. I walk from room to room, my footsteps echoing. I stop in the doorway of his study. My study now, I suppose. The emptiness is a physical weight, but it's also a space. A blank canvas of terrifying, exhilarating nothingness. I don't breakdance. I don't cry. I go to the kitchen, open the refrigerator, and stare at the mostly empty shelves. I take out the leftover meatloaf, a monument to our last terrible dinner. I open the trash can lid and I drop it in. It's a small, stupid act. But it's my act. My first conscious decision in this new, uncharted sea. I am adrift, but I am the captain of this wrecked ship now, and I will decide which way to sail. The paperwork is a special kind of hell. It's a cold, bureaucratic dissection of a 12-year life together. Every form for the lawyer feels like using a scalpel to pry apart fused bones. Division of assets. Parenting plan. Spousal support. The words are sterile, but they demand I inventory our shared existence. put a price tag on memories, and schedule my daughter's love. Lily is quiet, too quiet. She draws pictures of our house, but in her drawings, the sun is always a furious black scribble in the corner of the sky. She asks if Daddy's new apartment has a pool. She doesn't ask when he's coming home anymore. That silence is the worst sound I have ever heard. Robert is polite. He picks Lily up on time, returns her with a bag full of laundered clothes and new toys. We exchange information about her schedule, her meals, her well-being in clipped, efficient sentences. We are co-CEOs of a failed enterprise, managing the only valuable asset that remains. It is a form of torture I never could have imagined. The days bleed into each other. I go through the motions at the Marine Institute. I analyze water samples, write reports, but my focus is fractured. The ocean, my lifelong refuge, feels distant and mocking. Its vastness only mirrors the emptiness inside me. I am a submersible with a cracked hull, descending into a pressure that threatens to implode me from the inside out. This is the lowest point. It's not a dramatic shattering, but a slow, silent leak of all my light. It's waking up at 2 p.m. on a Saturday because I can't find a reason to get out of bed. It's staring at a full refrigerator and feeling nauseous with hunger. It's the terrifying realization that the anger that fueled me is gone, and without it, there is nothing. Just a profound, echoing numbness. I am a ghost in my own life. I float through the rooms of the house we bought when Lily was a baby, when our future was a bright, sprawling thing. Now, every corner whispers of failure. The patio where we grilled shrimp, the garden we planted together now overgrown with weeds, it all feels like a museum dedicated to a woman I no longer am. One afternoon, I'm supposed to take Lily to the aquarium. She loves the touch tank, the gentle brush of a stingray's wing against her small fingers. But when the time comes, I can't do it. The thought of putting on a cheerful face, of navigating crowds, of pretending to be fascinated by exhibits that once filled me with genuine wonder, it's an impossible mountain to climb. I call Robert. "Can you take her?" I ask, my voice thin and reedy over the phone. "I'm not feeling well." A pause. I can hear the judgment in his silence. The old Charlotte never got sick. The old Charlotte would have moved heaven and earth for a promised trip with her daughter. "Sure," he says, too quickly. "I'll be there in 20. When he arrives, Lily runs to the door, her little backpack ready. She doesn't look at me. The disappointment radiating from her small body is a physical blow. I have failed her. I have become the unreliable one, the broken one. The door closes behind them, and the silence of the house swallows me whole. This is it. The bottom. I am lying on the cold kitchen floor, and I cannot see a way up. The walls feel like they are pressing in. I can't breathe in this tomb of my own making. I need to get out. I don't grab my purse, my phone, my keys. I just walk out the front door, barefoot in the ratty sweatpants I've been wearing for 2 days. I get in my car, and I drive. I have no destination. I just follow the road, the endless, flat Florida highway, lined with strip malls and palm trees that look tired in the oppressive heat. I don't realize where I'm going until I smell it, the salt, the thick, fecund smell of low tide. My body has autopiloted me to the one place it knows. The old, abandoned boat ramp on the bayside, away from the tourist beaches. It's where I used to come to think during my graduate studies, before Robert, before Lily, when my life was my own. I park the car and walk to the end of the warped wooden dock. The water is murky, brown-green, not the brilliant blue of the Gulf. It's unglamorous, real. This isn't a postcard, it's the ocean's messy, working side. I sit on the sun-bleached wood, my feet dangling just above the water's surface. The tears come then. Not the furious tears of betrayal or the performative tears for Lily's benefit. These are deep, silent, heaving sobs that feel like they are tearing something loose inside my chest. I cry for the future we lost. I cry for the present I can't navigate. I cry for the woman I was, who believed in the resilience of things. I cry until I'm empty. Spent. I watch the water below me. A small, ugly fish nips at something on a piling. The world hasn't ended. The tide is still going out. Life, in its stubborn, unpretty way, is continuing. And a single, clear thought emerges from the wreckage: I cannot stay here. I cannot live on this floor. I cannot be the ghost that disappoints my daughter. I don't have a plan. I don't have a solution. But staring into the murky, unjudgmental water, I make a choice. I will not drown in this. The choice is simple. It is the only one I have left. It is the first step, and I have no idea where it leads. I stand up. My legs are shaky. I walk back to the car. I don't feel better. I feel raw, scarred, but the numbness is gone, replaced by a grim, flinty resolve. The bottom is a hard foundation. You can push off from it. The resolve I found on the dock was a fragile thing. It didn't magically fix the silence in the house or erase the hollow ache in my chest, but it was a direction, a heading, and for now, that was enough. The self-help books and well-meaning friends all said the same thing: find something for you. Rediscover yourself. The words felt trite, a cliché slapped on a gaping wound. But the alternative was to go back to the kitchen floor, and that was no longer an option. The randomized directive from the universe, or whatever algorithm was running my life, said freediving. It was almost laughable. Me, Charlotte Evans, PhD, who spent her days on the stable deck of a research vessel, surrounded by oxygen tanks and safety protocols. The thought of diving deep on a single breath felt like the antithesis of everything I was. Control, data, redundancy, that was my world. But that world had lied to me. Its rules were false. So maybe it was time to try a world with different rules. I found a freediving instructor in St. Petersburg. His name was Miguel, a man in his 60s with skin like worn leather and eyes that held the deep, calm patience of the ocean itself. He didn't ask about my life. He just looked at me, at the tightness in my shoulders, the way my eyes couldn't quite focus, and he nodded. "The ocean doesn't care about your problems," was the first thing he said to me. "It only cares if you are present. Your body will know what to do. Your job is to get your mind out of the way." The first session was in a pool. It was a disaster. The moment I held my breath and put my face in the water, a panic I'd never known seized me. It wasn't about the air. It was the silence. The same suffocating silence from my house, now amplified, pressing in on me from all sides. I shot up, gasping, choking on air and humiliation. "I can't," I sputtered, clinging to the edge. "My mind, it won't shut up." Miguel just smiled. "Good, now you know what you are fighting. It is not the water, it is the noise in your head. We will practice quieting the noise." So we practiced. Not diving, breathing, diaphragmatic contractions. Static apnea while sitting on the pool deck. It was meditative, tedious. Incredibly difficult. My mind, a frantic squirrel cage of divorce paperwork and Lily's sad eyes and the image of Robert's phone, fought it every second. But slowly, in increments of 5 seconds, then 10, then 30, I found slivers of quiet. The world narrowed to the count of my own heart, the feel of the cool tile beneath me, the slow, deliberate passage of air in and out of my lungs. For 10 seconds, I wasn't a betrayed wife or a failing mother. I was a body, breathing. It was the most peace I'd felt in months. A week later, we went into the open water, the Gulf just off Fort DeSoto Park. The water was clear, sunbeams cutting through the blue like cathedral light. I wore a simple mask, fins, and a weight belt. Miguel was next to me on a float, a safety line attached to my waist. "Remember," he said, his voice calm. "The dive begins the moment you decide to go. Your mind is already there. Your body will follow. Listen to it. It knows the way back to the surface." I did my breathing exercises, floating on my back, looking at the vast, empty sky. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. I filled my lungs one last time, gave Miguel a nod, and turned face down into the water. The panic tried to rise. The old familiar scream of, "What are you doing? You have no air, go back." I acknowledged it, and then I let it go, watching it drift away like a piece of seaweed on the current. Miguel's words echoed. "Your body knows." I began to kick, following the line down into the blue. The world changed. The surface chatter of boats and birds vanished. The only sound was the low, resonant tone of my own being. The pressure built on my ears. I equalized. My diaphragm began to contract, the first urgent signals from my body that it was time to go back. The mammalian dive reflex. My oldest instinct. A month ago, I would have obeyed instantly, fleeing for the safety of the surface. But today, I paused. I hung there, maybe 15 feet down, and I observed the sensation. It wasn't pain, it was just a signal, a request. I could say no. I looked around. A school of silver baitfish moved as one entity, a shimmering curtain in the water. A curious grouper peered out from a sponge-covered ledge. This was a world I had studied my whole life, but I had never been a part of it. I had always been an observer, an intruder with a tank of air. Here, on one breath, I was finally a guest, a temporary visitor in a silent, beautiful world. The contractions came stronger. My body was insistently asking now, demanding return. This time, I listened. I stopped kicking and let the buoyancy of my body begin to carry me up. I rose slowly, effortlessly, my face turned toward the shimmering silver ceiling of the surface. I broke through with a gentle exhale and a smooth, controlled inhale. No gasping, no panic, just a perfect, complete breath. Miguel was smiling. You were down for almost 2 minutes. For a first real dive, that is excellent. I didn't care about the time. I treaded water, feeling the sun on my face, and I started to laugh. It was a raw, surprised sound that echoed over the waves. I had done it. I had gone down into the silence, into the depth of my own fear, and I had come back. On my own power. On my own breath. The problems were all still there. Robert, the divorce, the co-parenting, the lonely house, but they felt smaller. The ocean had given me a new scale. I had touched a quiet place inside myself that his betrayal could not reach. It was a tiny territory, but it was mine. And I knew, with a certainty that felt as solid as the ocean floor, that I could go back there any time I wanted. I had found my way to breathe. Everything else would have to follow. Freediving gave me back my breath, but my daughter, Lily, remained the anchor that kept me from drifting entirely into that deep, silent blue. My time underwater was a escape, a recalibration, but the surface world was where life was lived. Her life. The new rhythm was a fragile, complicated dance. 3 days a week, the house was too quiet, the absence of her laughter, a physical ache. The other 4, it was filled with her energy, her questions, the relentless, beautiful chaos of a 6-year-old. I was learning to be a full-time parent and a part-time parent simultaneously, and I was failing at both. On my days with her, I tried too hard. I planned elaborate trips to the zoo, science experiments with baking soda volcanoes, painstakingly crafted dinosaur-shaped pancakes. I was performing Happy Mom, a desperate, overbright caricature I thought she needed. She'd participate, but her smiles were polite, her enthusiasm muted. She'd curl into me on the couch at night and ask, "Are you still sad, Mommy?" The question was a gut punch. I was so focused on proving I was okay that I'd forgotten children are seismic sensors for emotional truth. She could feel the fissures under my painted-on smile. On the days she was with Robert, the silence was a predator. I'd clean her room, folding tiny shirts with a pain so sharp it felt like nostalgia for a moment that was still happening, just not with me. I'd stare at my freediving gear, but the motivation to go to the water would vanish, replaced by a leaden lethargy. The house was a museum of our former life, and I was its lonely, heartbroken curator. The turning point was a Tuesday. My day. The baking soda volcano had been a particular disaster, erupting all over the new kitchen backsplash and sending Lily into a frustrated meltdown because the lava wasn't red enough. I was on my hands and knees, scrubbing pink-stained grout, feeling the hot prickle of tears of failure, when she tapped me on the shoulder. She was holding a worn deck of old-maid cards. "Can we just play?" she asked, her voice small. We sat on the floor amidst the lingering smell of vinegar and disappointment. And we played. And for the first time since the split, I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just her mom, groaning when I drew the old maid, laughing when she did a little victory dance. We weren't creating a perfect memory. We were sharing a mundane, imperfect moment. And it was real. It was after the game, as we were putting the cards away, that she said it. "Daddy has a dog." The statement was so casual, so utterly random, that it took me a second to process. What? At his new apartment. The man next door has a dog. A yellow dog. His name is Finn. He's nice. She said it without any particular emotion, a simple report from the front lines of her other life. A dog. Robert, who had never wanted to deal with the hair, the walks, the responsibility, was living next door to a dog. The irony wasn't lost on me. It was one of 1,000 tiny details about his new life I didn't know and had no control over. A month ago, this news would have sent me into a spiral of comparing his supposedly carefree new existence to my own struggle. But now, on the floor with my daughter, the news just was. It was a fact. It didn't wound me. "That's nice, honey," I said, and I meant it. If a dog next door brought her joy in that other place, then I was for it. Later that week, on one of my empty days, the lethargy was winning. I scrolled through my phone looking for distraction and found myself on the website for the local animal shelter. I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was Lily's comment about the dog. Maybe it was the memory of how she looked, playing with the labs that sometimes ran on the beach. The page was a gallery of hopeful eyes and wagging tails. And then I saw him, a senior dog, a Labrador mix with a graying muzzle and wise, gentle eyes. His name was Buddy. His bio said his owner had passed away and he'd been waiting for a home for 6 months. He was described as calm, a great listener, and good with children. I wasn't thinking. I was feeling. I drove to the shelter. The smell of antiseptic and animals hit me as I walked in. I filled out a form. I said I was just browsing. A volunteer brought Buddy into a meeting room. He didn't jump or bark. He walked over slowly, sniffed my hand, and then leaned his full weight against my leg with a soft sigh. I sank to my knees and buried my face in his fur. He stood there, patient and solid, absorbing my quiet tears without judgment. He was an anchor in a room that suddenly felt steady. It was impulsive. It was maybe a terrible idea. But for the first time in a long time, it was a decision made not from a place of lack, but from a place of potential. A potential for quiet companionship, for walks that would get me out of the house, for a living creature that would greet me with unconditional enthusiasm, even on my worst days, for Lily to have a constant, furry friend in both homes. I signed the papers. I bought a leash, a bed, food. I drove home with the dog in my passenger seat, his head out the window, tongue lolling in the wind. The house was no longer a museum. It was a home with a dog bed in the corner. The silence had been replaced by the soft jingle of a tag and the sound of contented breathing. Lily's drawings that weekend featured 3 figures, a mom, a girl, and a dog with a gray muzzle. The sun was yellow again. I hadn't fixed everything. The paperwork was still a nightmare. The future was still uncertain. But I was learning to navigate the currents. I had my breath, and now I had an anchor. It was enough to keep me from going adrift. Mastery is a quiet thief. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It simply moves in one day and you realize the things that once felt impossible are now as natural as breathing. Which, ironically, was the whole point. My world had shrunk and expanded in equal measure. It had shrunk to the 4 walls of my house, the rhythm of Lily's schedule, the well-worn path to the grocery store and back. But it had expanded into the vast blue silence of the Gulf. The water was no longer a place to escape from my life, but a place to return to myself. Miguel had become less of an instructor and more of a guru. Our sessions were now less about technique and more about philosophy. "The ocean is a mirror, Charlotte," he said one morning as we bobbed on the float, the sun a hot coin in the sky. "It shows you exactly what you bring to it. Bring fear, it will be terrifying. Bring peace, it will embrace you." I was bringing peace, or at least a facsimile of it that grew more real with every dive. The mammalian dive reflex, that primal urge to breathe, had become an old friend rather than a tormentor. I'd learned to acknowledge its insistent tap on my shoulder, to sit with the discomfort, and to understand it was just a signal, not a command. I could choose to stay a little longer, to explore the quiet a little deeper. On this particular day, the conditions were perfect. The water was a pane of glass, the visibility stretching to what seemed like forever. We were over a section of reef that was particularly vibrant, a sprawling city of brain coral, sea fans, and darting schools of angelfish. "Today, we go for depth," Miguel said, his voice calm. "Not numbers. Feeling. Just you and the lime. Listen to your body. It will tell you when to turn. The line was a taut, white rope descending into the endless blue, weighted at the bottom, a slender thread connecting the world of air to the world of mystery. I'd been down to 20 meters, then 25. It was a mental game more than a physical one. The pressure, the narcosis, the urge to breathe, they were all just thoughts. And thoughts could be observed and let go. I began my breathing cycle. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. The world faded. The sound of the boat, the cry of the gulls, the constant hum of my own anxiety, it all dissolved into the rhythm of my breath. I was preparing not just my lungs, but my mind. With a final, full inhalation, I gave Miguel the signal, pinched my nose to equalize, and turned down, grasping the line. The free fall is the most magical part. After the initial kick, gravity takes over. You become weightless, sinking effortlessly into the blue. The surface light recedes, shifting from bright white to a deeper, more profound blue. The silence is absolute, broken only by the low thrum of my own heartbeat in my ears. I equalize constantly, a gentle pop-pop-pop that marks my descent. At 15 meters, the familiar contractions begin. I greet them like old acquaintances and continue down. The world is narrowing to the line, the changing color of the water, the feeling of immense, peaceful pressure all around me. At 30 meters, something shifts. The light is a dim, ethereal twilight. The world above feels a lifetime away. And then I see it. Below me, the reef drops away into a sheer wall, vanishing into the black abyss of the deep channel. It is both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The edge of the known world. This is where you meet yourself. Not the self defined by a failed marriage or a custody schedule, but the essential self. The one that is just a conscious spark in a temporary vessel. The pressure is no longer just physical. It feels spiritual, pressing out all the petty griefs and angers, leaving behind something pure and unadorned. A massive shadow detaches itself from the wall. A grouper, old and vast, with a mouth that could swallow a football. It moves with a lazy, confident grace, its eye, the size of a saucer, regarding me with ancient, neutral curiosity. It isn't afraid. It isn't aggressive. It simply is. And in its presence, I feel myself become simple too. Just another creature, passing through. My body gives a more urgent signal. It's time. I am deep, deeper than I've ever been. I am at peace, but I am not reckless. I respect the rules. I turn my head, look back up the line toward the distant, shimmering silver ceiling. The ascent begins. I don't kick. And I don't kick. I just float upward, arms outstretched, riding my own buoyancy. I am flying now, rising back toward the world. The blue lightens, the details of the reef return, the fish become more numerous. It feels like a rebirth, surfacing into the light and the noise. I break the surface with a soft paw of exhalation and a smooth, clean inhalation. The world rushes back in, the slap of waves against the float. Miguel's smiling face, the heat of the sun. 32 meters, he says, his voice full of pride. And you were down for over 3 minutes. Beautiful dive, Charlotte. Calm, perfect form. But the number means nothing. The time means nothing. What matters is the feeling I brought back with me from the edge of the abyss. A profound, unshakable calm. The grouper's neutral gaze. The understanding of my own small, yet significant, place in a vast world. That night, tucking Lily into bed, she looked at me and said, "You're different, Mommy. How so, sweetie?" "You're shinier," she declared, and then rolled over, asleep. I sat on the edge of her bed, watching her breathe. She was right. The woman who had breakdanced in a rage on the floor was gone. The woman who had cried on the dock was gone. In her place was someone who had faced the deep, the silence, the pressure, and had not broken. She had bent, and in bending, had become stronger. The current of my life had pulled me into a deep and dark place. But I had learned that the same current could also bring you back to the light. And now, I knew how to swim. Happiness, I discovered, wasn't a destination you arrived at after crossing some finish line. It wasn't the grand, sweeping orchestral score that plays at the end of a movie. It was a rhythm. a quiet, steady beat you learn to recognize in the mundane moments of a life you'd built yourself. The divorce was final. The papers had been signed in a lawyer's office that smelled of lemon polish and regret. Robert and I exchanged a look that was no longer filled with anger or even pain, but with a weary, mutual acknowledgement. A chapter was closed. We were co-parents now, business partners in the enterprise of raising Lily. It was a clean, if not painless, severance. And with that severance came a strange, new lightness. The house was truly mine now. Robert's ghost had been exorcised by time. By paint, I'd turned his study a bright, sunny yellow, and by the sprawling, slobbering presence of Buddy. The dog had become the soul of the place. His gentle snoring was the new background music. His wagging tail at the simple sight of me was a daily lesson in unconditional, positive regard. Lily was thriving. The quiet, anxious child was being replaced by a bubbly, confident girl. Our rhythm was ours alone. Mornings weren't a rushed panic to get out the door. They were pancake breakfasts where we made faces out of blueberries, and walks with Buddy where we'd stop to examine every interesting beetle or peculiarly shaped leaf. I'd stopped performing happy mom. I just was her mom, and that was enough. My freediving had evolved. I no longer went to the water to escape or to prove something. I went for the pure, simple joy of it. I'd often go alone now, with Buddy as my solemn lookout, sitting on the beach and watching my float with a serious expression. I'd freedive just to hover over a patch of seagrass, watching a seahorse curl its tail. Or to lie on the sandy bottom 10 meters down and look up at the shimmering, distorted ceiling of the surface world. I was a visitor in a silent cathedral, and every visit was a prayer of gratitude. One Saturday, Lily was at Robert's for the weekend. The house was quiet, but the silence was no longer my enemy. It was a comfortable, companionable quiet. I spent the morning in the garden, pulling weeds, my hands in the dirt, the sun warm on my back. Buddy snuffled along the perimeter, on the lookout for squirrels. In the afternoon, on a whim, I drove to my favorite fabric store. It was a place I hadn't been in years, not since before Lily was born. I used to love to sew. I'd make my own dresses, curtains, anything. Robert had always seen it as a quaint, slightly messy hobby. "Why spend all that time when you can just buy it?" he'd say. But today I wandered the aisles, running my hands over bolts of linen and cotton. I bought a beautiful, sea green fabric with a subtle wave pattern. I wasn't sure what I would make. It didn't matter. The act of choosing it, for no reason other than it brought me joy, felt like a declaration of independence. That evening, I cooked. Not a meal for a family, or for a husband whose preferences I knew by heart. I cooked for me. I put on music I loved, a little jazz, something Robert had always found discordant. I danced barefoot in the kitchen, a slow, swaying dance, not the frantic breakdance of my grief. Buddy thumped his tail in time on the floor. I made a mushroom risotto, something rich and decadent that Robert had always deemed too heavy. I ate it at the kitchen counter, reading a novel, and it was the most delicious meal I'd had in years. After dinner, I took a blanket and a cup of tea and sat on the back porch. The sky was bleeding from orange to deep purple. Buddy settled at my feet with a contented sigh. I felt a wave of something so profound it took my breath away. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't passion, it was contentment. A deep, bone-deep satisfaction with my own company. I was happy, alone. The thought was revolutionary. My entire adult identity had been built in relation to others. Robert's wife, Lily's mother. I'd never been just Charlotte. Now, I was, and I liked her. I liked her quiet life, her weird hobbies, her love for the silent deep, her goofy dog, her terrible taste in music. I didn't need to be completed by anyone. I was already complete. The pieces of me that had been shattered hadn't been put back together in the old configuration. They had formed a new mosaic, stronger and more interesting for its cracks. The phone buzzed. It was Lily, FaceTiming from Robert's. Her face filled the screen, smudged with what looked like chocolate ice cream. "Hi, Mommy. We had pizza and Daddy let me have 2 scoops. What did you do?" I smiled, my heart feeling full to bursting. "Oh, not much, sweetie. I danced in the kitchen and I made a risotto and Buddy and I watched the sunset." Her nose scrunched. "Riss, what to?" I laughed. "I'll make it for you next time. It has mushrooms." Ew, she squealed with delight. I can't wait. We blew kisses and hung up. I looked out at the darkening sky, the first stars beginning to prick through the velvet. The rhythm of my life was my own. It was the slow, steady beat of my own heart, the ebb and flow of the tides I loved, the joyful patter of my daughter's visits, the loyal snoring of my dog. It was a simple rhythm. But it was mine, and it was more than enough. Contentment is a sturdy vessel, but it doesn't make you immune to storms. The storm, when it came, was a quiet internal one. Buddy, my gentle, gray-muzzled anchor, was listless. He'd refused his breakfast, a crime of the highest order in his food-obsessed world, and when I'd taken him for our morning walk, he'd simply lain down under the sprawling shade of a banyan tree and looked at me with apologetic eyes. A cold dread, entirely disproportionate to the situation, seized me. He couldn't be sick. He was my stability. He was Lily's faithful steed. The panic was a familiar, bitter flavor in my mouth. It was the panic of things slipping beyond my control, of a foundation shaking. I fought it down, taking a deep, freediver's breath. This is a problem with a solution, I told myself. You are a capable woman. You handle problems. I called the vet. My usual clinic was booked solid. The receptionist, her voice frazzled, gave me the name of another practice that could take an emergency. Ask for Dr. Evans, she said. He's great with seniors. The name sent a ridiculous, superstitious jolt through me. Evans, my name. It felt like a sign, though, of what? I couldn't say. An hour later, I was in a bright, sterile exam room that smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Buddy was lying on the cold tile floor, his head heavy on my foot. I was stroking his ear, murmuring nonsense reassurances to us both, when the door opened. He wasn't what I expected. In my mind, Dr. Evans was a grandfatherly figure with spectacles and a kind, distracted manner. This man was probably my age, maybe a few years younger. He had the kind of tired, competent eyes I recognized from fellow scientists, people who were good at their jobs because they truly cared about the work. He wore scrubs with cartoon bones on them, which should have looked silly, but somehow didn't. Well, hello there, big fella, he said, his voice calm and low. He didn't look at me first. He went straight to Buddy, kneeling down to his level without any hesitation. He didn't pat him on the head, a move dogs often hate. He just offered a closed fist for Buddy to sniff. Buddy's tail gave a feeble, thumping swap on the floor. Approval, I'm Ben, he said, finally looking up at me. His eyes were a warm hazel. Charlotte, I said, and my voice came out a little strangled. And this is Buddy. He's just not himself. Ben Evans nodded, his hands already moving over Buddy with a gentle, practiced confidence, checking his gums, his eyes, palpating his abdomen. Buddy, who usually grumbled at vets, just sighed and submitted. How long has he been like this? He asked, his focus entirely on the dog. I told him about the refused breakfast, the lethargy. As I spoke, I watched his hands. They were capable, clean, with short, practical nails. There was a quiet, focused energy about him that was the polar opposite of Robert's polished, performative charm. Probably just a tummy bug, Ben said after a thorough examination. He's a bit dehydrated. We can run some blood work to be sure, but I'd like to start him on some fluids, see if that perks him up. Is that okay? He said it like it was a real question, like my opinion on the treatment of my dog actually mattered. It was such a simple thing, but it felt profoundly respectful. Yes, of course. Whatever he needs. He prepared the IV with efficient movements. As he shaved a small patch on Buddy's leg and inserted the needle, he talked to Buddy the whole time in a soft, reassuring murmur. Like, there we go, big man. Just a little pinch. You're being so brave. This is going to make you feel much better. I felt a lump form in my throat. It was the kindness, the unassuming, professional, deep-down decency of it. While the fluid stripped, we made awkward small talk. He asked what I did. I told him I was a marine biologist. His face lit up. Seriously? That's amazing. I wanted to be a marine vet for a while. Ended up on land with slightly less bitey patients. He gestured around the room. I laughed, a real, surprised laugh. They're not all bitey. Just the ones with teeth. Point taken, he smiled. It was a nice smile. It reached his eyes. He asked about Buddy's history, and I found myself telling him the abridged version that I'd adopted him a few months ago from the shelter. He listened, really listened, his head slightly tilted. "The shelter," he said, nodding. "I volunteer there on my weekends. It's where I got this guy." He pointed to a framed photo on the wall behind him of a scruffy terrier mix. "His name is Scamp. He's a menace. I love him. He volunteers at the animal shelter." The randomized parameter from a lifetime ago, a piece of data I'd long forgotten, clicked into place with an almost audible snap. The world felt suddenly, strangely aligned. The moment passed. He checked Buddy's IV, declared him perking up nicely, and gave me instructions for the next few days. A bland diet, rest. He handed me his card. "Call if you're worried about anything. Even a small thing." I paid at the front desk, Buddy leaning against my leg, already looking more like himself. As I turned to leave, Ben emerged from the back holding a different leash. A woman with a crying toddler was trying to wrestle a wriggling dachshund into a carrier. Without being asked, Ben knelt down and helped her, his calm presence somehow soothing both the dog and the flustered mother. I stood there for a second, watching him. He wasn't doing it to be seen. He was just doing it because it needed to be done. It was who he was. Outside, the Florida sun was blindingly bright. I loaded a much improved Buddy into the car and sat in the driver's seat for a moment, the business card in my hand. Benjamin Evans, DVM. It was just a vet visit. A random, stressful event. But it felt like more. It felt like the universe, after months of throwing me into the deep end, had finally sent an unexpected buoy. Not a rescue. I didn't need rescuing. But a signal, a point of light on a shore I hadn't even known I was sailing toward. I started the car, a small, unfamiliar smile playing on my lips. It was just a meeting. But for the first time since my life had fractured, the thought of a man didn't bring a wave of bitterness or fear. It brought a flicker of simple, uncomplicated curiosity. A week passed. Buddy was back to his old self, vacuuming up any stray crumb that dared to hit the kitchen floor and wagging his tail with renewed vigor. But the image of the vet with the kind eyes and the cartoon bone scrubs lingered in my mind like a pleasant aftertaste. I found excuses to look at his business card, which I'd propped up against a cookbook on the counter. Benjamin Evans, DVM. I told myself I was just being a responsible pet owner, that it was good to have a vet I liked on speed dial. But the truth was, I'd replayed our brief interaction more times than was strictly necessary. The randomized parameter echoed in my head, volunteers at animal shelter. It felt less like a random data point and more like a cosmic nudge, a shared language I hadn't known I'd wanted to speak. The excuse presented itself on Thursday. Buddy's prescribed bland diet of boiled chicken and rice was running low. "We need to make more chicken, Bud," I said, scratching behind his ears. He thumped his tail in agreement. A perfectly logical, non-needy reason to call the vet's office. To ask a follow-up question. About chicken. My heart did a ridiculous little flip as I dialed the number. I was a grown woman, a scientist, a mother. I'd faced down bull sharks and divorce lawyers. And yet, calling a man about chicken broth made my palms sweat. The receptionist put me on hold. The tinny sound of classical music filled my ear. I was just about to hang up, my courage failing, when a calm, familiar voice came on the line. "This is Ben. Hi," I said, my voice slightly too high. "This is Charlotte. And Buddy." "The big yellow lab with the tummy bug?" I cringed at myself. "Of course he remembers the dog, you idiot." "Of course," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "How's the patient?" "He's great." Back to his normal, gluttonous self. "Thank you, I had a question about the chicken and rice." "The portion size?" I trailed off, realizing how utterly transparent I was being. There was a pause on the other end. I braced for a polite, professional brush-off. "But it didn't come, you know," he said, his tone shifting from clinical to something more conversational. "The best way to explain it might be to show you. I'm actually at the shelter right now, doing a checkup on the new arrivals. We've got a few underweight pups who are on the same diet. If you're not busy, you could pop by. See the process?" It was smooth. It was professional. And it was very clearly an invitation. My freediver's breath caught in my chest. The old Charlotte, the one from a year ago, would have made an excuse. She would have retreated into the safety of her own solitude. But the woman who had faced the abyss wasn't afraid of a little shallow water. Yeah, I said, surprising myself. I could do that. Where do I park? The animal shelter was a cacophony of barks and meows and echoing concrete. I found him in one of the back rooms, kneeling beside a kennel that held a shivering, skinny pit bull mix. He was speaking to her in that same low, reassuring murmur he'd used on Buddy. He looked up as I entered, and his smile was genuine and unguarded. Hey, you made it. For the next hour, I wasn't a potential date. I was his temporary assistant. I held puppies while he checked their temperatures. I helped mix a giant pot of bland, unappetizing-looking food. I watched him with the animals, and it was like watching a different species of man altogether. He was patient, endlessly gentle, and possessed of a quiet strength that didn't need to announce itself. There was no pressure, no awkward small talk. The work was the conversation. We talked about the plight of senior dogs, the importance of spaying and neutering, his failed attempt to grow tomatoes on his balcony. As we were washing our hands at the deep sink in the utility room, he said, "So, the portion size for Buddy. About a cup of chicken and rice, twice a day. But I'm guessing you figured that out already." I felt a blush creep up my neck. Busted. Was I that obvious? He leaned against the counter, drying his hands on a paper towel. "A little," he admitted, a playful glint in his eye. "But I'm glad. I was trying to figure out a non-weird way to ask if you wanted to get a coffee sometime. The chicken was a better excuse than anything I'd come up with." I laughed, the tension breaking. "Coffee sounds less messy." "Good," he looked relieved. "There's a place down the street that doesn't mind if you smell like disinfectant and puppy breath." Our first official date was, true to his word, a simple coffee. Then it was a walk with our dog's Buddy and his terrier, Scamp, who indeed lived up to his name, tearing around the dog park with manic energy while our respective leashes got hilariously tangled. And then came the randomized event, failed baking. It was a Sunday afternoon. Lily was with Robert. Ben had mentioned he had a sweet tooth but was a disaster in the kitchen. I, emboldened by this new, flirtatious energy, had rashly proclaimed, "How hard can it be? We'll make cookies." The answer was, very hard. My kitchen, usually a place of order, looked like a flour bomb had gone off. We'd misread the recipe, confusing tablespoons for teaspoons of baking soda. The result was a pan of cookies that spread into one giant, thin, bubbling, bitter-tasting monstrosity. They were inedible. We stood side by side, staring at the horrific, lacy sheet of failed confectionery. And then we looked at each other. And we burst out laughing. It was a deep, helpless, stomach-hurting kind of laughter. Buddy and Scamp, sensing the joy, started barking and chasing each other around the kitchen island. In the midst of the chaos, covered in flour, laughing at our own incompetence, Ben reached out and gently wiped a smudge of chocolate chip from my cheek. His touch was warm and sure. "We're terrible at this," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "The worst," I agreed, my laughter subsiding into a warm, happy hum. "Good thing there's an ice cream place down the street that doesn't mind if you smell like burned cookies and failure," he said. And that was it. There was no grand declaration. No dramatic kiss. Just a shared failure and a plan for ice cream. It was comfortable. It was real. It was a gentle tide, washing up on a shore I had spent a long time building, and it felt not like an erosion, but like a natural, welcome arrival. He was just a man. A good, kind, funny man who loved animals and was bad at baking. And I was just a woman, learning how to let someone new see the life she had built, flower disasters and all. It wasn't a whirlwind. It was a slow, gentle turning of the tide. And for the first time, I was happy to let it come in. Life, I was learning, wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a new present so compelling that the past lost its power to hurt. The merger of two lives wasn't a corporate takeover. It was a slow, careful weaving of threads, creating a pattern stronger and more beautiful than either could be alone. The first, and most important, thread was Lily. I told her about my new friend Ben, the doggy doctor. She'd absorbed this information with the solemn practicality of a 6-year-old, her primary concern being whether Scamp, the terrier she'd seen in pictures, liked to play fetch. The first meeting was meticulously planned for neutral territory, the park. I was a bundle of nerves, far more than I'd been on any date. This felt higher stakes. Ben, to his credit, was calm. "Just a guy and his dog at the park who happened to run into you and yours," he said, his voice soothing over the phone. "No pressure. We saw them from a distance. Ben was throwing a frayed tennis ball for a wiry little dog that shot after it like a bullet." My breath hitched. This was it. Buddy saw Scamp first. His tail began its slow metronome wag. Lily, holding my hand tightly, pointed. "Is that them, Mommy?" "That's them." We walked closer. Ben pretended to notice us for the first time. He waved, a casual, easy gesture. "Hey, fancy meeting you here." The dogs made the introductions for us. Scamp zipped over, dropped the slobbery ball at Buddy's feet, and launched into a playbow. Buddy, with the dignity of his years, sniffed the proffered ball, then gave a deep, rumbling woof of approval. The ice was broken. Ben knelt down, bringing himself to Lily's eye level. He didn't overwhelm her with questions or false enthusiasm. "You must be Lily," he said. "I've heard you're the boss around here." Lily, peeking out from behind my legs, gave a slow, serious nod. "I'm 6. "Wow, 6, Ben said, matching her seriousness. "Scamp's only 3, but he acts like he's 1. "Do you think you could help me teach him some manners?" And just like that, he'd handed her the power. She emerged fully, her little shoulders squaring with purpose. "I'm good at teaching. I taught Buddy to sit for a treat." "Perfect," Ben said, handing her a dog treat from his pocket. "Let's see if Scamp is as smart as Buddy." I watched them, my heart in my throat. Ben was a natural. He didn't try to be her father. He was just a friendly, interesting adult who respected her and loved dogs. It was enough. It was more than enough. The merger continued, one small, domestic moment at a time. Ben's favorite spicy mustard appeared in my refrigerator door. My sea green fabric, now a half-finished sundress, lay draped over a chair in the living room, and he never once asked when I was going to clean it up. He just accepted it as part of the landscape of me. Our shared activity, the randomized flea market exploring, became a weekend ritual. It was the antithesis of the sleek, expensive dates of my previous life. We'd wander through crowded, dusty aisles under the Florida sun hunting for treasures. Ben had an eye for old veterinary manuals and ridiculously ugly ceramic animals. I loved vintage maps and anything sea-worn and rusted. One Saturday, we found ourselves at a huge outdoor market in a dusty field. Lily was with us, riding on Ben's shoulders for a better view, clutching a freshly purchased lemonade. We stopped at a stall overflowing with old books. As Ben chatted with the seller about a first edition of All Creatures Great and Small, I felt a small hand slip into mine. I looked down. It was Lily. She was swinging our clasped hands, humming to herself, her attention on a display of wind chimes. It was a simple, unconscious gesture. But it felt monumental. She wasn't just tolerating his presence, she was incorporating him into her world, and by extension, into mine. The 3 of us plus 2 dogs, now the best of friends, were becoming a unit. A strange, patchwork, beautiful unit. We'd have pizza and movie nights, the dogs taking up most of the couch, Lily wedged happily between Ben and me. We'd go to the beach, and I'd watch him teach Lily how to skip shells while Buddy lumbered into the waves and Scamp yapped at the surf. It wasn't perfect. There were hiccups. Moments of awkwardness when Lily would mention something about Daddy's apartment, and Ben would deftly change the subject, giving me space. There were times I'd feel a pang of the old anxiety, the fear of this new happiness being somehow fragile. But those moments grew fewer. The new pattern we were weaving was strong. It was built on a foundation of shared laughter, mutual respect for the past, and a quiet, steady commitment to the future we were building day by day. I wasn't just Charlotte anymore. I wasn't just Lily's mom. I was part of an us, and this us didn't feel like a loss of myself. It felt like an expansion. The love I had for Ben didn't replace the love I had for my daughter or the life I'd built. It settled alongside it, a new, harmonious current in the river of my life. The merger was complete. Not with a signed document, but with 1,000 tiny moments. A shared look over Lily's head as she told a nonsensical joke. The comfortable silence as we all read our own books in the same room. The feeling of his hand finding mine as we walked through the chaotic, colorful maze of the flea market, our little patchwork family, whole and happy under the vast, sunny sky. The final piece of the mosaic, the last stitch in the tapestry of our new life, was the house. The randomized parameter had said, new house, same state, and it felt right. We weren't running away. We were planting a flag. The old house, my house, was filled with too many ghosts. It was a beautiful shell, but its foundations were cracked with old pain. Robert's apartment was a temporary landing pad. What we needed was a place that was ours. A place with no history, so we could build our own. We found it on a quiet, oak-canopied street not far from the water. It was a Florida bungalow, painted a cheerful sky blue with a wide porch perfect for rocking chairs. The moment we walked in, Lily ran through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing, declaring which room would be hers with the unshakable certainty of a queen claiming her domain. Buddy and Scamp sniffed every corner, tails wagging in a joint inspection that ended with them flopping down together in a patch of sunlight on the living room floor. Their seal of approval. Ben and I stood in the kitchen, his arm around my waist, and looked out at the backyard. It was big enough for a garden, for the dogs to run, for a future swing set. We didn't say anything. We just smiled. It was perfect. The move was a chaotic, joyful affair. Our friends from the Marine Institute and the shelter showed up, hauling boxes, making jokes, and ordering too much pizza. It was messy and loud and filled with laughter. It was the opposite of the silent, grim packing of Robert's things a lifetime ago. This was a celebration. The wedding was a simple affair. We decided on the backyard of the new house, before we'd even fully unpacked. There was no point in waiting. We were already a family, this was just making it official. The morning of, I felt a calm I'd only ever found 30 meters under the sea. Lily was my hyperactive, ecstatic flower girl, practicing scattering rose petals down the makeshift aisle we'd created between the moving boxes. My dress wasn't white. It was the sea green color of the fabric I'd bought for myself on that first day of contentment, now sewn into a simple, elegant shift. It felt like a promise I'd made to myself, kept. Ben was unbearably handsome, standing under the arch of oak trees we'd decorated with simple white flowers. He looked nervous, but when he saw me walking towards him, Lily carefully placing petals before me, his face softened into an expression of such pure, unguarded love that it took my breath away. Robert was there. He'd come, with his new girlfriend, a quiet, kind-looking woman who taught art. He shook Ben's hand, gave me a hug that was stiff but not unkind, and spent most of the ceremony watching Lily with a sad, proud smile. It was closure, a peaceful, mature passing of the torch. He was a part of our story, but he was no longer the author. And then there was Finn. Robert's neighbor's yellow Labrador, the subject of Lily's casual report from months ago. Robert had brought him, as a surprise for Lily, as we said our vows. Simple words we'd written ourselves about partnership, patience, and shared car rides with dogs, who had been sitting politely, let out a soft, happy woof as if giving his blessing. Everyone laughed. It was perfect. We didn't have a traditional reception. We had a barbecue, grilled shrimp and burgers, music from a Bluetooth speaker, kids and dogs running wild on the new grass. It was us, messy, real, and full of life. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in strokes of orange and purple, I found a moment alone. I stood on the back porch of our new home, looking at the scene. Ben was slow dancing with Lily on her feet, both of them laughing. Robert was chatting with Miguel, my freediving instructor, who had come and was showing him pictures of a grouper on his phone. The dogs were asleep in a pile, exhausted from their adventures. This was it. The upgrade. It wasn't about a better husband or a nicer house. It was about a better me. A woman who had been broken open by pain and had chosen to fill the cracks with light, with strength, with a love for her own life first. The love with Ben, the joy of our family, wasn't the source of my happiness. It was the beautiful, overflowing result of it. I had built a new shore, and I had swum to it. Not away from my past, but towards my future. Ben found me there, slipping his arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "Hey, wife," he whispered. I leaned back into him, into the solid, steady warmth of him. "Hey, husband." We watched Lily try to teach Scamp to roll over, her little voice patient and determined. "We did good," he said softly. "We're doing good," I corrected, turning in his arms to face him. The future wasn't a destination we'd reached. It was this. The endless, beautiful, daily practice of building a life together. It was the promise of 1,000 more ordinary, perfect moments in this blue house, on this new shore. The music changed to something slow and sweet. ID. Under the vast, star-dusted Florida sky, in the backyard of our new beginning, we danced.